Chofetz Chaim, almost 100 years old, was crying and telling people, I see black clouds over Europe. The streets will be full of blood if people don't do tshuva. He begged people, please take me house to house so I can talk to people, help them do tshuva. 100 years old. Why? He saw. How long was this? Was 9 years before the Holocaust.
Because you said that if someone keeps Torah, no one can hurt them, but 6 million were hurt. So they didn't keep Torah because they were hurt? No. So first of all, the reality is that most of the people that lived at the time of the Holocaust were not observant of the Torah. That's a fact. There was nearly 90% assimilation in parts of Europe, especially Germany. Other parts of the world had, 75% assimilation, intermarriage, Jews marrying non-Jews, Jews converting to Christianity. So the world at large of Jewry was on the verge of extinction by itself, even without the Holocaust. In fact, in Rabbi Ephraim's Ochachot V'Tochachot, one of the sections talks about the Holocaust, and in essence, where was God during the Holocaust? And it includes a study that was done by a non-Jew of the times, and see where it is. And he says that based on the research that he did, Judaism, and this is not a Jew. This is a non-Jew doing a study on the Jewish people for historical purposes. Here we go. In his book, Professor Bernard Wasserstein, he's a historical professor, expert in Jewish history, who teaches in the University of Chicago. And he says, in regards to the time before the Holocaust, he says, in regards to the Jews of Europe, there was a demographic breakdown. There was a very difficult demographic breakdown in a very negative way, where there was a high level of assimilation of Jews marrying non-Jews. The spoken language of Hebrew and Yiddish especially, Yiddish was the standard language at the time, became more and more minimal, meaning less people spoke Yiddish, and started going on a downward spiral. The observance of the Torah and the religion itself was in a straight projection downwards for a long period of time already. And even if he says, "Afilu antisemiyut lo hevia le'yerida b'nisuyei ta'arovet," even the anti-Semitism did not stop the intermarriage. Usually, when the goyim hate you, you don't want to marry them. No, the intermarriage continued despite the anti-Semitism. And he says, "Ma she'ani menaseh la'agid הוא שיהודי אירופה היו במשבר קיומי, גם ללא האיום החיצוני של היטלר." He says, what I'm trying to tell you is that the Jews of Europe were in a existential risk, even without the outside threat of Hitler. And this is in an interview that was put in a newspaper called Israel Today in December 24th, 2018. Point being is that when you see not just what happened with the Holocaust, as the aftermath, but where were the Jews before the Holocaust? You see that most of the Jews in the world were not following the Torah and the mitzvot. And the Torah tells us in Parashat Bechukotai, and also Parashat Azinu, and also Parashat Kitavo, and also Gemara Masechet Sanhedrin, Perek Chelek, and many other places that, including this week's parasha actually, that when we do the will of Hashem, Hashem protects us, but when we don't, Hashem will punish us to such an extent that He sends us a foreign enemy that we've never known, and that literally can cause more damage than we can possibly imagine. And all of the details of what happened in the Holocaust were not only mentioned in the Torah, but even the Chachamim of the time, or even up to 100 years before it, already said that this is what's going to happen.
Like prophets. Rav Wasserman outright said that when Geiger, the head of the reform movement, Shem Reshaim Yerkav, when they made it a law within the reform movement that intermarriage is now allowed, it's a mitzvah in their eyes. Hence the reason why their rabbis are not even Jewish today. He said when they changed the Shulchan Aruch, they changed history. So much so that Rabbi Yisrael Salant, almost 100 years before the Holocaust, says there will come a day where the Goyim will write their own Shulchan Aruch, and in their Shulchan Aruch they're going to say that Jews are not allowed to marry Goyim. Opposite of the reform. Meaning that the Goyim will agree with our Shulchan Aruch, with the Tzaddikim, with the people that believe in Hashem, with the people that follow Torah. But the Goyim are going to say it, not the reform, not the heretics. And he says, Oy lanu, woe to us on such a day, when we have to learn Torah from such a Shulchan Aruch. Why? Because when the Goyim are going to teach you Torah, that means it's Yed Hashem, it's the hand of Hashem, and it's going to hurt. And that's exactly what happened. The Nuremberg laws, passed 90 years later, said any Jew that marries a German, death penalty. Death penalty. The Chofetz Chaim, almost 100 years old, was crying and telling people, I see black clouds over Europe. The streets will be full of blood if people don't do tshuva. He begged people, please take me house to house so I can talk to people, help them do tshuva. 100 years old. Why? He saw. How long was this? Was 9 years before the Holocaust. He already told all of his Talmidim, Rav Wasserman included. On Rosh Hashanah, he says, see black clouds. Bad things are going to happen. People don't do tshuva.
Now, the big question is, okay, many people were sinning. Even the majority of people were going against God. But what about the righteous people? Very simple. Once there is a decree on Klal Yisrael, a negative decree on Klal Yisrael, then both the righteous and the wicked are put in the same basket. That's what the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat said at the time of the Beit HaMikdash. Surely there were some people that were good, but even they were punished, along with the evil people that were idolaters and so on. Why? Because their goodness had limitations, where they did not rebuke their fellow Jew in order to get them to do tshuva. So even though they were following the Torah as far as keeping Shabbat, keeping kosher, not being an idol worshiper, that's good. But they violated the Torah by not helping their fellow Jew do tshuva and stop their, their idolatry and their immorality and so on. So when there is a bad decree on the world of Jewry, then both the righteous and the wicked suffer together. Why? Because Kol Yisrael Aravim Zelazeh. All of Am Yisrael are accountable for each other. And that's why during that big decree, individually speaking, which was what I was referring to earlier, which is when somebody follows the Torah and mitzvot, then Hashem will protect them. That's individually speaking. But as a nation, as a total, that's a different story. But that's also why there's not, it's not every day that Hashem, Baruch Hashem, brings us a Holocaust. It happens every so often when Hashem has to, in essence, save his people by punishing them. Save his people by nearly annihilating them, as happened multiple times in history, whether it's from the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Romans, the Greeks, the Spaniards, the Nazis. There's many different nations have tried to destroy us throughout all of history. Baruch Hashem, we're here and they're not. But the key is that Hashem allowed all of that to happen because this, in essence, got us to do tshuva, and this is one of the ways that Hashem uses His law to get His herd, get His people to come back into order. So it doesn't mean that the individual blessings are not valid. It means that we have individual judgment, we have a national judgment, and that's in essence the difference.
Meaning that when we don't fight against the Reshaim, against the evil, whether that evil has a kippah or it doesn't, then Hashem has to fight for His own honor. But when He fights for His own honor, unfortunately, there's a lot of collateral damage. And that's why we learn, Chachamim teaches from the prophet Pinchas, who became Eliyahu Navi, Zachul Letov. Pinchas is Eliyahu, that people that fight the wars of Hashem, they bring mercy to the world. Even though they bring havoc, because now you pretend like there's peace because everybody's politically correct. You only talk behind each other's back, not to each other's face. And then one guy calls you out, hey, you're saying this, you're that, it calls Reshaim, calls it out, brings out the dirt in public. No one likes that. He says, but that one that actually fights the wars of Hashem, that makes everybody uncomfortable, but nonetheless, some people do tshuva as a result, that actually brings mercy from Shamayim. Why? Because at least somebody's fighting for Hashem.
אם בחוקותיי תלכו ואת מצוותיי תשמעו ועשיתם אותם